We know how hard it is trying to find a financial professional and trying to figure out, how do you know if they're any good or not? I mean, really, because it's not like if you've dated, you've maybe been out with a couple of people, you've started to get an idea of what you like and what you don't like. But financial advisors, you tend not to have been through a few of us, I think. Is it fair to say, ladies? They're all looking at me thinking, where's she going with this? Right. So it's about giving some context. So what we're going to do today is, because obviously we know way more financial advisors than you do, right? And we happen to have done the job. And we're going to talk you through our number one pet peeve of what we think is a sign that the advisor isn't right for you. What we hope that you get from this episode is, one thing, hopefully reassurance that you've got a cracking advisor. If not, then it's permission to go and ask for something different. So that's what we're hoping you will get from us today. Obviously, we might start getting hate mail from other financial advisors. You feel free.
You get that already.
Feel free to direct that all to Emily. Okay. Right.
Who is not here to defend herself.
Which makes her the perfect scapegoat. That's what I like in a financial advisor. I've kind of set the tone there, haven't I? So what we do is just going to share with you the things that are our number one thing that winds us up when we hear about it from people. So I'm going to jump right into the other end of the couch. And Catherine, I know that you're going to have something really valuable to add here. So what's at the top of your list?
I do have something at the top of my list. Can I just caveat before that there are certain things that all of us have that you just want to sense check that your advisor's got, in terms of they're regulated, they're qualified at least to diploma, DIP-FA or DIP-PFS. So let's assume the playing field is even, everyone's qualified, everyone's regulated. I think one of my biggest, this advisor isn't right for you, is where I see you're paying. So you have that investment, that ISA, that pension. Somewhere on that statement, it will say ongoing advice or ongoing service. There is an advisor who is being paid rightly if you get a service. But time and time again, I hear clients who are paying 0.5, 0.75, 0.3% of their investments, which should be for ongoing service. And that service would include at least an annual review, a review of the funds that you're invested in. Do these still match your goals? Is this still the right investment? Are we on track to hit the original plan? But if you're paying that 0.5 or whatever that is, and you're not getting contact from your advisor, to me, that's a really, really key thing to go and think, I'm paying for something I'm not receiving service for. It's kind of like an expensive subscription to the gym membership you're not using, or one of those apps that we downloaded and we don't use. I think if you're paying us, then you should rightfully be receiving a service that is right for you. I don't think there's one right service. It's really, what service did you want? What were you promised? And is that being delivered? So I'd say hunt around, look on your statements. If you can see this ongoing advice fee and you've not heard from your advisor for more than 12 months, then start shopping around.
Okay, Catherine, I think that's a really good point. So let's say that everybody's just paused the podcast and ran off to get the paperwork and sat down and seen the advisor fee written on it. And then they're looking at it and they're like, okay, so my advisor's getting paid X per year to provide me with a thing. And I'm not really sure what the thing is that I'm getting. Okay, so it's not that I haven't heard from them for years, because if you've not heard from them for years, that one's a bit of a no-brainer. But let's say that they have been in touch, but I'm not really clear on what it is that I'm paying for. What advice would you have for someone then?
I'm a researcher. I like to find out my things before having the conversation, but the other option is just have the conversation. So I'd do two things. I'd look at the original client agreement that you signed, the terms of business with that advisor. And it should say that this is our ongoing service. This is what we expect to give you for it. And kind of think, well, am I getting that? And the second one would just be ring up and have a conversation and say, and I've had clients do this to me and honestly given them an answer. And that's perfectly reasonable for us to ask that question. is, I'm paying you 0.5, or I'm paying this ongoing monthly amount to you from my investments. What do I get in return? What's the service? How are you helping me? Please, can you show me how that's helped me in a tangible way? And also ask, is that still right for you? You might have had a change in your own situation since you entered that agreement. And maybe it's time to review, is this enough service for me? Is there a different option? Can I have a less hands-on approach and keep more of that in my investment? Or conversely, can I pay a little bit more, or a fixed monthly amount, and know that I'm going to see you more and you're going to be with me having these conversations, listening to me and helping me achieve some of those goals? I don't think it matters what service you get, as long as it's serving you and as long as you're getting something from that and it's really clear.
I think that's brilliant. So you've just paused again. You went off, didn't you, to go and see if you could find this terms of business thing Catherine mentioned. And you can't find it, can you? But it's okay, because your advisor will have a copy of it. So all you need to do is get in touch with the office and ask them for a copy of your original client agreement, and they will happily send that out to you. And just a little footnote, right? We don't normally get terribly technical on the Women in Money Cafe, right? But there's a very exciting piece of legislation coming in, and it's called consumer duty. Okay, and this comes in next year, and this is going to have a really big influence on how financial advisors work with their clients. So if you want to be a little bit naughty, you could just ask your advisor about consumer duty, and that's going to get them laser focused on delivering you a superb service.
Already working with the right person, and you're getting that service, and they already do it simply because they're a great advisor.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Catherine, because hopefully people have got lots, they've got some practical things that they can go and do there. And hopefully that's going to deliver better value for them. So Sarah, what I want to know now is, what is the number one red flag for you that an advisor might not be right for the client they're working with?
Oh, I'm going to have to choose now, aren't I? I think the number one is understanding. It slightly takes the first place for me, because if at the end of your conversation, your meeting, you're not sitting there thinking, oh, great. And you're thinking, well, I'm glad that's sorted. I don't really know what's happened or what we're doing or why we're doing it, but I trust them, and it's happening anyway.
What do you mean, Sarah, when you say understanding? Could you just expand on that a bit for me?
Yeah, I think everybody should be in the position where they understand what their plans or investments are for. They understand why they've taken them out, what purpose they're serving. They might not fully understand all the technical ins and outs, but they should understand why they've got them and how they're serving their needs, goals, plans, whatever it is that they work through with their advisor. So if the advisor is talking to them in a way that's using lots of language, or that is hard for them to understand, or using jargon that is hard for them to understand, or not really just explaining, yes, we've done all these are all these lovely products, but this is how it fits into your life, this is how it serves you, then they're not really going to fully appreciate what those things are for. The number of times you come across people and they say, well, I've got this, I don't really know what that's for. And I've got this, I think that was for that, but I'm not quite sure. And because they don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of everything, but they should know what they've got and what it's for, what its purpose is. I think that's pretty fundamental.
Right, so almost like, so if you listen to this, it's having a little mental checklist in your head then of all the financial things that you've got. So 1, do you know what it is? 2, do you know what it's meant to do? And 3, do you know roughly how it works?
Can I chip in, because I'm smiling internally now, because I think that's massively valid. Financial language and products can be complex, and part of our role, or a good advisor's role, is to pitch that so you understand it, not talked down to, but not deliberately out-talked or confused. But it reminds me, there's a radio show. I think we should do this, Jill. And people have to come and explain what their job is to a panel of old ladies, which I think is brilliant. But I think we should be able to understand what we do enough to distill it into its simplest term so that anyone can understand it. And I think that's another podcast that we're going to do, Jules. We're going to explain certain products as though we're talking to a panel.
I'm so excited. I so want to do that. And can I volunteer my mum?
Yeah.
She would be perfect, right? Because if we can take something and explain it to my mum so that she gets it, we've got it nailed.
Yeah. Do you remember when we launched the podcast and you did a video on how to actually rate and review and listen to the podcast for your mum? Did the screen share so that she could So yeah, really, we shouldn't be talking in a way that ordinary people. And when I think of how little I knew, and none of the words made sense when I first picked up those books and was starting. It's a whole new language. Part of our responsibility is distilling that. And so I think Sarah's absolutely right. It has to be that we leave our client in a position that they understand the purpose, the function, and the key features. Or at least they know they can ask, or they know where to look to reread or to recheck.
The risk of being really terribly compliant, this is also another outcome of consumer duty, that we are able to communicate in a way that people get. So I think some bad examples will spring to mind easily when you've been sitting there and they've been talking at you and bamboozling you with language. And you're like, I haven't got a bloody clue what you just said, but I'm just going to nod and smile. I'm nodding and smiling. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got us three who will sit there and draw you a picture, me with my crayons, so that you can actually visualize or grasp what it is that we're talking about. Catherine, I think you've got another really good point to make on this whole communication piece and understanding that Sarah mentioned.
And I think sometimes this isn't where the advisor is necessarily a bad advisor at all. But this episode's about, is it the right advisor for you? If you were to imagine the conversation you've had with your advisor and imagine hearing two voices back, are you 80%? Because if you're not, then your advisor's not listening to what's valuable to you. So they should be doing 20% of the talking, not 80%. So if you find the conversation's quite one way, all about whatever the topic is, performance, them, their experience, etc., that may be a flag. This isn't the right person for you. But if they've asked some lovely open questions, really interested in what your goals are, who you are, what you want, what do you understand. So I think to get to that reverse where you are doing 80% of the talking and they're not doing 80% of the talking. So that would be a little challenge I just watch out for. And I think that's a skill. It's not a bad advisor, but with advice and any finance, you've got so much technical knowledge and you've also got these soft people skills, and kind of finding that balance of the two is a challenge. It's one that certainly us three and many of the great advisors we work with constantly are working towards.
I love that, Catherine, because listening is always my big bugbear. And you people do say that a lot, that I just don't feel listened to. And if you let people talk, you find out so much more. It all affects everything that we do with them. So, yeah, it comes back to the old days, doesn't it, when it was the old back of a fag packet fact find. So if they haven't taken time to really get to know you, sorry, does that need to be deleted out?
No, not at all. I was just thinking, is that another sign of that your financial expert's not the one for you? If they're writing their fact find on the back of
the equivalent of, I mean, this is going back a few decades, but yeah, or not writing anything down. Because in all honesty, if you've had a meeting where you're listening 80% of the time, if you haven't written anything down or used any form of noting down or recording that conversation, are you really going to remember it all?
Do you know what I do? Because my memory is so shocking. Like if I'm in a face-to-face client meeting, I will record the conversation, and it's so I'm not distracted by writing, and that allows me to be even more present and really listen. Because what if I go to write down the bit that I think it's important, and it turns out it's the bit 10 seconds after that that's really important? I worry that I'll miss it. Yeah. So anybody want to know what my number one pet hate is?
Yes, come on then, Jules, tell us.
Okay. See, up until now I've been very balanced and reasonable, haven't I? my number one, that saying that the financial advisor, you should maybe be asking questions about whether they are right for you or the way you're working together is right. As if you're part of a couple and they are ignoring one half of the couple. So it could be like the advisor's not even encouraging, if it's you, right? If they're not even encouraging you to attend the meetings, or if it's your other half, they're not encouraging them to attend the meetings. Oh, big red flag. If you're both attending the meetings and they're addressing one part of the couple more than the other, that's sending massive alarm bells off in my head. And I think I will get really excitable about this because obviously I work with widows and I have to mop up the carnage that happens when the previous advisor has neglected the surviving spouse. It is the things that I hear, it would just make you cry. And so that's, for me, if you're not fully engaged in the relationship or your other half isn't, that's a sign that the advisor isn't doing as good a job as they could, because the question is always, what happens when one of you is not here?
Do you think also, Jules, it's not just whether they're attending the meetings, but if you're both sat in the meeting together, are they making a conscious effort to make eye contact with both of you, ask you both if one of the partnership may well just be more confident and do the talking, but do they make sure that the other partner is feeling comfortable, that they understand? Are they trying to bring them into the conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even
Included.
sometimes you'll get, like, in a couple, maybe one person's more dominant in the financial conversation, but it's the advisor's responsibility to balance that out. And if the balance
Absolutely.
doesn't happen in a joint meeting, then it's the advisor's responsibility to make sure that the other person that has been less represented in the conversation still has their opportunity to have input. Because otherwise what you end up with is financial advice that suits one person. And you've gone for advice that suits two people. But I have heard stories of where the advisor is sitting there, and I'm going to make the sweeping generalizations because they're generally bloody true, right? But they're sitting there and they will ask the man questions about what the woman wants. And I'm like, she's bloody well sitting there. Ask her. Sorry. Yeah, get me excited.
And then they
about
wonder
that
why
one.
women think they're not very good with money.
Yeah, and I think that last point, Jules, about that advisor in that room advising a couple is giving advice for two people. It's not one person's advice. And certainly when we look at our own partners, certainly me and my husband, we are very different. We have some shared collaborative goals, but our attitudes, our risk is different, our goals are different, our spending habits are different. And if you came back to me with one piece of advice expecting it to fit both of us, then you've not listened or recognized. So in some senses, we would need a third collaborative piece where we can work on together and separate other parts. I remember I had the first time I became aware of this, I was quite recently qualified and working with a couple. I felt I was listening to both, and she was saying, I agree with him. The moment he passed away, she was a totally different person. She had totally different risk appetite, totally different product, totally different goals. Part of that would have been that change, but part of it was because she never really was having her say when they were the couple, which you probably see all the time, Jules.
Yeah, and it can be things that are really simple and easy to address. So I've got one client who came to me after she'd been divorced. So her and her husband had the same advisor. And then, so they've been divorced and the money's been split, and we're looking at how her money's invested. And she's in her late 50s. So that money's been invested for quite a long time. And we just had the conversation about what's important to you. And it turns out she cannot tolerate gambling. Gambling is a big no-no to her because of the damage that it causes to families and communities. And nobody had said to her, right, well, would you like your money invested in a way that we took that element out? She's like, I could have been doing that all these years. Like, yes. You know, that's a really simple thing.
Yeah.
So if you're part of a couple, has the advisor asked you specifically what's important to you as an individual?
Yeah.
And I think each of us has touched on this one, in that, are you, when you're in the room or the Zoom call or the phone call with your advisor, do you just feel really comfortable? Comfortable, like when you don't understand, to ask, comfortable to say, actually, I've got a question, or to represent yourself, because, we are individuals as well. We don't need to be given a voice. We have a voice. Are you comfortable enough to challenge when you don't understand what's written in the report or the client agreement or your service? And if you're really not comfortable, shop around, because there are so many great advisors that you're just going to feel more comfortable with. So I might take that one and add that one to a bit further down the list.
Right, I've got another one, and this might just be because it's me. But does your advisor have an opinion on things? Are they going to speak their mind? So sometimes all of us, including me, want to do something that's maybe not the smartest with my money. And is your advisor just going to agree with everything that you want to do? Or are they prepared to take a stand and go, look, I know that you want to do this, you think this is a good idea. However, at this point in time, I disagree with you and I'm advising against this because of X, Y, and Z. I want someone that is going to tell me, you're being an idiot, stop what you're doing.
I think that you're right. I would generally, just being me, find
You'd
a
want it slightly
softer way
differently
of
to me.
doing that. Yeah, I'm not going to almost just rubber stamp what you've instructed me, because where's the advice in that? You've employed an expert because they have some expertise that you're interested in hearing and learning about. So I think that is key. When you said about opinion, I did worry. I think, hang on a second, are we going somewhere else? And I had a different answer for where I thought we were going. So
where did you think I was going?
Well, knowing you as I do, I thought that I would have to be expressing my own opinions on things with my clients. And I actually have the opposite thing there. So as you know, I work very strongly with people with sustainable or ethical values. And that's not mine. Theirs are going to be different. So I was just making sure that our own personal opinion is still personal. And then I'm going to tease you with the example of Amazon. I don't shop there. Yeah, I would never tell one of my clients that was something important to me, because that to me that's my own personal opinion.
I believe you have actually instructed me to carry on shopping at Amazon.
I did. Yeah, because that wasn't going against your own values. So I think it's keeping that client value at the heart and at the center. But yes, if they're instructing to do something and you think it's wrong, at the end of the day, that client can come back and say, well, I still want to do it. I hear you. I hear what you've said, but I still want to do it. But yeah, I'm not going to just do what a client says. And I think if your advisor is just following your instructions, you might be missing a trick there, because you could be missing out on some valuable guidance or advice on a better way to achieve what you're wanting.
Yeah, and I think the classic example of this that I hear, especially when I'm speaking to younger advisors and in current market conditions, is where clients want to either stay in cash or move money into cash. And when you look at the overall picture of what would be best for the client, they want to go into cash or stay into cash because they're scared. It's not actually what's best for them. And I think we have a responsibility to speak up then and have the slightly uncomfortable conversation, say, okay, I get that you feel this way, and it's completely understandable that you feel this way, but it's not actually in keeping with the financial plan that we've built. Let's take a step back and then revisit that and walk through the steps together again. Rather than just, yeah, you're scared, you want to be in cash, let's go into cash.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that brings that lovely word empathy back in as something your advisor should have. The empathy to recognize that you're scared or uncomfortable, and that you need space for that part to be heard when you're having 80% of that conversation and receiving a service that you pay for.
All right. I think we covered a lot of ground there, ladies, and sort of hopefully we've given people things to think about with regards to financial experts that they work with. Sarah, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Well, I was just looking at the little notes I took before we started recording. And there's one bit that you haven't mentioned, Julie.
Oh, I think I know which one it is.
Bullshit.
Oh,
You haven't mentioned the bullshit.
no, that's not
We've
what
kind of touched upon it. If they're talking too much about themselves, or if they're not really listening, it all comes to, or not using the right language. But if they
expand
just...
on the bullshit, because this is so me. It's funny that I missed that. Go on, tell me more about bullshit.
Well, I wrote it down. It's just, I mean, the sad thing is, sometimes people think they're not going to spot it when it happens, but most people's instinct is usually pretty spot on. And if somebody's just feels like they're trying to pressure you or push you into doing anything and just giving you all, great reasons or great stories and reasons why it's good, chances are, they haven't done 80% listening to start with, but they're actually just giving you a load of bullshit.
Am I allowed to give an opinion on this?
Yes, go on.
All right, one of my pet hates that I see and I hear all the time about this one, and this is my personal opinion, okay? It's when they start banging on, I'm talking about financial advisors, when they start banging on about their investment process. We have got this amazing investment process, and it's wonderful because it does this, and it does that, and it does the other. You don't get amazing investment processes. You get functional investment processes. Nobody has this bright, shiny, super stellar one that beats everybody else all the time. They should be robust, and they should be functional, and they should be boring. They should not be an exciting topic of conversation for 30 minutes. Personal opinion.
No, not at all. No, I don't think there should be too much emphasis on the investments other than are they suitable for you? Are they, as Catherine said earlier, do they suit your values and your risk appetite? And are they suitable for the plan and the goals that you're trying to achieve? But otherwise, it should be all about you, your plan, where we're getting to, how we're getting to, where's that journey, what's changed.
Yeah.
It's all about that. It's all about them and their life and what's happening.
Right. You heard it from Sarah. It is all about you. If it's not all about you,
It's
red flag. We're at Money Cafe, the musical, coming soon.
I would love to hear if you are listening and this has kind of made you reflect on, is my advisor right for me? Because, we hear stories, we see great events. Julie, we were at the PFS festival last week, which for those who don't know that term, it's Personal Finance Society Festival. There was a breath of fresh air. There were diverse, informal, warm, relaxed environment. There are some really great advisors out there. So I think if any one of those suggestions that Sarah, Jules, or I mentioned, yours isn't doing, then get in touch. Because even if it's not us, I know we collaborate, don't we? We really, between us, know hundreds of advisors, and there is one for you.
Yeah, and it feels sometimes like I know every female advisor in the UK. So particularly if you want a woman advisor, I've got like my own list. All right, so thanks for that, Catherine. Is there any last points that you want to add?
No extra points. Maybe just it'd be useful to recap on like the list that we've generated between ourselves.
Okay, would you like to do that?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll start, and the bits that my brain didn't retain because I was busy listening and not taking notes. So are you receiving a service or the service you expect for what you're paying from your advice investments? That was number one for me. Are you understanding the meetings? Are you leaving your advisor call with a report in a language that you understand, and you understood the conversation and you feel like, yeah, I got that. I could explain that to a panel of 3 elderly people. Do you get the majority of the conversation, the airtime? Is it majority you? And is the conversation about you, your goals, what you need, what you want, and not full of financial that you just don't understand? And are they addressing both of you? If you are a couple, are you both equally being acknowledged and heard?
I think that was
Did I miss it?
supremely summarised. That was
Very
awesome,
good.
Catherine. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Right, so we hope that you found this episode really useful and that you can sit back and reappraise your relationship with your advisor and either feel reassured that it's working well for you. If it's not, then you know how to tweak it and you've got a clearer idea of what you're looking for. If you have found the episode useful, there's one thing we would ask you to do. Could you please leave us a review? Because that really helps us reach more women. And that's the only reason we do this. That's the reason we do it, is to help you guys out. Also, if you have an older lady in your life who would like to be on the panel when we do this episode of Can We Explain It to a More Mature Lady, then drop us a message and volunteer them, because that one's so happening. It's such a great idea. Okay, but as always, look, thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate it. And take care of yourselves until next time.